One thing which, well, I'm certainly feeling a lightness at the moment because the academic year for me, studying at Laidlaw College, that has come to an end. I know for high school students, for primary schools, got a little bit left to go, or perhaps final exams and all that type of stuff. But already looking ahead to the next year and educational opportunities for you, for your children, lots of exciting things ahead. But actually, freedom of speech and freedom of conscience in the education space, that's not necessarily something we can take for granted. Joining us on the program from the Free Speech Union, Jonathan Ayling, kia ora.
Morena.
This is, I suppose, the ideal of a free, in theory, compulsory education in New Zealand, that as a nation we would acquire knowledge, that we would have robust discussion about intellectual ideas that will be fully equipped for life, rather than, it's not like we're going to an ashram where we learn a certain set of principles. There should be a balance in what's taught educationally, at least in theory.
Certainly, certainly a balance and a diversity, a variety of perspectives that contribute to the way we understand the world. Previously we were absolutely certain that the Earth was flat,
Yep.
or that the Earth was the center of the universe rather than the sun, and it's through the competing of ideas that we explore the deficiencies of the knowledge we have, and we grow. And certainly, at the primary school level, I think we're pretty confident about a lot of what we're putting forward. At the secondary school level, there starts to be a little bit more dispute. Yep. Certainly in tertiary, all they do is disagree, I think. And it seems to me that if we lose hold of this belief, not only in the need, but in the great value of intellectual diversity, we will all be poorer for it. And yet I'm worried, Andrew, that certainly at that secondary school level, we're starting to see more dogmatism. Yep. Almost this, some would say, pseudo-religious way of thinking, though not religious in the way you and I might understand it, insisting on certain precepts, certain perspectives that have been highly disputed up until very recently. Suddenly there'd be no space to explore that at all. And so from the perspective of the Free Speech Union, this is concerning, and we don't have much time for it. We're pushing back to ensure that there remains space for these competing perspectives.
Essentially being taught what to think, not how to think, which, hold on, isn't that supposed to be the other way around? If we're equipping people for life, they should know how to engage with arguments in a respectful way, and to be able to consider different viewpoints. And otherwise, as you say, this is just dogma. We've got the truth, which is taught to our children. Then there's disinformation on the other side. This, look, unless this is pushed back against, this will become, I suppose, the accepted norm of who we are as a society. I suppose there's certainly a doctrinal strategy involved in having only a certain point of view taught at our high schools.
Absolutely. And what's becoming more and more problematic is the fact that it's not only that you can't say certain things, you can't voice certain perspectives that run counter to the prevailing narrative. Now you must say certain things as well. Yep. It's not enough to not oppose. You have to support certain perspectives. And so the Free Speech Union over the past week has been working across a number of issues, primarily orientated at that secondary school level. It's things like a new criteria for principals. So the crucial work that principals do across our nation, leading our schools, but a new set of criteria that require them to express support. Things like saying the education system in New Zealand has been colonial, and that we will now express an anti-racist perspective in our school curriculum. Yeah. And it goes, well, what does that actually mean? There would be a wide variety of perspectives of what the impacts colonialism had on our education system. Some would say in many ways, it had a very positive impact on a lot of our education system. And so where does that sort of perspective, where does that fit in? Where is there any room for nuance to go, there was giving and taking? There were things that were done well and there are things that weren't done well. That's just one example. Another, of course, would be with the RSE curriculum, the relationships and sexuality curriculum. There's been a lot of commentary on this by other actors, and we'll leave it up to them to decide whether this is good or not good. There are obviously some very strongly held opinions in this regard. From our perspective, though, if we can't have a space to disagree, if we can't have a space to say, hang on a second, that is entirely inconsistent with my conscience, I'm not going to express support for these ideas, well, then we are just left with dogma. We're left with an imposition of a way of thinking. And this undermines the very basic ways that our society functions. New Zealand hasn't become the peaceful, prosperous, stable society that we are by accident. There have been a number of key laws, civil liberties that have underpinned our ability to interact in this way, and we're really concerned that a hatchet has been taken to some of these principles.
Yeah, we've already seen that even if a teacher doesn't express contrary views publicly, even if they post them on their social media account, they can get in trouble and deregistered. But I suppose pushing back on this one, because hey, maybe this is partly behind the rise in homeschooling or Christian schools, but hey, let's not all go that way. In terms of, I suppose, having an influence within the state education system, rather than throwing our hands up in horror and going, "Oh gosh, this is all terrible." What are some of the ways that we can engage with this, that we can push back in this space? Because it can be quite intimidating, Jonathan.
Absolutely. It can be very intimidating for students in those environments that feel pressured, for parents of those students. I have real respect for the leaders, for the principals in this space as well. I'm going into a series of meetings this afternoon with principals who are looking to reckon with how they navigate very strongly held opinions on both sides. And I think, Andrew, you're absolutely right. Really, what we must remember is that we are called to be a light, and a light is not lit and then placed under a bushel. I was preaching just yesterday on the fact that we should actually be seeking to go out into the darkest places of our societies, and some may contend that is our high schools today. But I think engagement at the board of trustee levels, engagement with teachers, knowing your kids' teachers and encouraging them and supporting them, and not just sending nasty emails when you find out my kids are being taught what. Actually having a relationship with the parents and having them understand why you hold these opinions. And, that's the encouragement that Peter gives us, to always have a reason for the hope that we hold. And I think so often we struggle to articulate the way we actually view these values, and the perspectives that some Christians might hold is actually a real blessing. So actually these should be positive things we're seeking to share, rather than things where a hammer we're banging on others, or a fist we're banging on the table, which is how so often I think it can come across.
Certainly. And I mean, hey, for people listening at the moment, coming to the end of the academic year, as I said beforehand, perhaps something to prayerfully consider over the summer break is standing for the board of your local high school, having an input in there. I think, regardless of whether or not you have children at the local high school, if you're part of that community, you have the opportunity to be elected onto that board and have a say. Even then, though, actually, I suppose that's at a school-by-school level. That's important. At a broader policy level, organisations like the Free Speech Union, you're able to amplify those concerns in a way which really gets some traction.
That's absolutely right. And, that's why we're still running a petition calling for the National Teaching Council not to impose compelled speech on teachers where they have to use, without any exception, the preferred pronouns of students in classrooms. But we also seek to be constructive as we engage with Iona Holstead, the Secretary of Education at the Ministry of Education, working with the newly elected government to have a view to sponsoring critical thinking and I diverse viewpoints at every level of our education. That's why next year the Free Speech Union is going to be running programs in 20 high schools around the country, not telling anyone what to think, but going, how do we deal with ideas that we find offensive? When we come across a perspective we haven't heard before and seems ludicrous, how do we assess it? How do we know that's true? I think it needs to be more than, if the Bible says it, I believe it, and that's it. Let's maybe be a little bit more sophisticated in our analysis and look to the other ways that we can sense what is true and what is untrue. And I think as we do that, again, the impact on society is only a blessing for all of us.
Yeah. And praying a blessing onto the society, the cities, the towns, the school communities that we live in, certainly an important thing to do. Hey, lots of information about this, including a couple of articles recently about FSU's involvement in the education space. FSU.nz, the place to go. Jonathan, thank you for your work. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew.